The text arrived while I was folding the laundry. "Hey, sweetie, just a heads up. Christmas is going to be simple this year. Money is tight, so we will not be doing big gifts, just the essentials." I stared at the message, my fingers tightening around the fabric in my hands. I was not surprised. My parents had always been practical about Christmas. They never splurged, never went overboard. But this year, something about the message felt off. It was not just that they were cutting back. It was the finality of it, like a decision had already been made without me. Still, I forced a smile and replied, "Of course, no worries. The kids will understand." Because what else could I say? My husband and I were not exactly swimming in money either, but we always made Christmas special for our twins, Emma and Noah. We saved throughout the year, picked out thoughtful gifts, wrapped them with care. Even if it was not extravagant, it was magical. But I swallowed my disappointment and let it go. After all, family is not about gifts. It is about being together. That is what I told myself. That is what I believed until the photos popped up on my screen. It was 2 days after Christmas, a lazy afternoon. The kids were playing with their new toys, my husband was fixing a leaky faucet, and I was scrolling through social media, just passing the time. And then I saw it. "Best Christmas ever," my sister's caption was plastered over a carousel of photos. The first image was my parents' living room, but transformed. A massive tree twinkled with white lights, its branches weighed down by shiny gold and red ornaments. A mountain of gifts spilled onto the floor, wrapped in elegant silver and gold paper. My nieces, my sister's 2 girls, sat in the center of it all, tearing into expensive brand-name presents. Designer sneakers, high-end electronics, and what looked like a brand-new tablet in my youngest niece's hands. I froze, my heart pounding. We had not been invited. No one had mentioned a family Christmas gathering. For us, Christmas had been quiet. Just my husband, the twins, and me. Eating a simple dinner at home, exchanging modest gifts, and watching Christmas movies on the couch. No grandparents, no cousins, no big celebration. Because apparently we were not part of the family this year. I scrolled through the photos again, hoping I had misunderstood. Maybe this was from last year. Maybe they had reused an old post. But no, the timestamp was clear. This had happened this Christmas. I checked my messages. Nothing from my mom. Nothing from my dad. No invite. No mention. I swallowed hard. Had they even thought about Emma and Noah while they watched my nieces unwrap hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars in gifts? Had they even cared? I felt sick. I did not want to assume the worst. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They had lied to me. Not just about the money, not just about the gifts. They had lied about what we meant to them. I was not angry at my nieces. They were just kids. I was not even angry at my sister. I had long accepted that she had always been my parents' favorite. But my parents, the people who raised me, the ones who told me that Christmas was not about gifts, that family mattered most, had deliberately excluded us from something that should have been for all of us. And the worst part? They had let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple because there was no other choice. Yet for my sister's kids, Christmas had been grand and extravagant. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I went to my contacts. I blocked their numbers. Not in anger, not in pettiness, but because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And this year, my Christmas gift to myself was peace. Blocking their numbers should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like an open wound. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, playing with Emma and Noah, but I felt hollow. The betrayal sat in my chest, heavy like a stone I could not swallow. My husband, James, noticed. "You okay?" he asked one evening as we put the kids to bed. His voice was careful, knowing. I hesitated. "Yeah, just tired," I lied, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead before shutting off the light. He did not push, but I saw the way he watched me, the way his brow furrowed when he caught me staring off into space. Because how do you say out loud, "My own parents do not care about me"? How do you admit that you were not just left out, you were discarded? I expected them to try to contact me, but nothing happened. The silence stretched for days. At first, I thought my mom would at least try. Some excuse, some last-minute explanation to soften the blow. But there was nothing. Then my sister's name popped up on my screen. I let the phone ring. Then it rang again and again until finally a text came through. "I saw that you blocked Mom and Dad. What is wrong with you?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "We should talk." Not even an ounce of guilt or understanding. Just accusation. I stared at the message, my pulse hammering in my ears. What was wrong with me? James found me sitting on the edge of our bed, gripping my phone like it might break in my hands. "They did not even try to deny it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sat beside me. "They knew what they were doing, Isabella, and they do not care that it hurt you." I exhaled shakily. I keep trying to tell myself that maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they had a reason. James shook his head. Stop. Stop making excuses for them. They made a choice." I swallowed, feeling the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes. He was right. They had chosen my sister, chosen her kids, chosen to lie to me, to let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple while somewhere else they were celebrating with a tree, full of gifts and laughter. That was not an accident. That was deliberate. That was a decision. The next day, I finally responded to my sister's message. They told me they could not afford Christmas gifts for the kids this year, but they could afford a full celebration for yours. They could afford luxury gifts, expensive decorations, a party, but they could not afford to even invite us. Explain that to me. Her response came almost instantly. "It is not a big deal, Isabella. Mom and Dad just wanted to do something nice for the girls." "You are overreacting." Overreacting? I felt my stomach drop. This was not an accident. This was not just about Christmas. This was how they saw me. Less than the afterthought, the child who did not matter as much. And for the first time in my life, I stopped pretending otherwise. I stared at my sister's message for a long time before typing my final response. "I hope your daughters had a great Christmas. Mine had to settle for small and simple because that is what Mom and Dad told me we could afford. And now I know where I stand in this family. So do me a favor. Do not contact me again." I hit send, then I deleted the thread, and finally I blocked her too. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done. Done begging for scraps of love. Done pretending that I mattered. Done waiting for my parents to treat me like family when they had made it clear I was not. I put my phone down, exhaled deeply, and for the first time since Christmas, I felt lighter. The weight of their rejection was still there, but now I was not holding on to it. For the first time in my life, my phone was silent. No messages from my parents, no passive-aggressive texts from my sister, no guilt-tripping calls trying to smooth things over without actually addressing what they had done. Just silence. And it should have been a relief, but in the days that followed, I found myself reaching for my phone out of habit. A part of me hoping my mom would call to say, "Sweetheart, this is just a misunderstanding." I wanted my dad to step in and say, "We never meant to hurt you." But that did not happen. Because the truth was, they had meant to do exactly what they did, and they did not regret it. I should have expected the gossip. It started small. A mutual friend casually mentioned that my sister had been venting about me. Then another reached out saying, "Hey, is everything okay with your family? Your mom seems upset." Upset? She was upset? She had cut me out of Christmas and given my sister's kids everything while letting mine believe there was nothing to give. And now she was upset? I ignored the messages. But then James came home from work one evening, his face tight. "Your dad called me. I stiffened. What did he say? He is worried about you, that you are acting irrationally by cutting off the family. I let out a short, humorless laugh. So I am the irrational one? Not the people who lied to me and excluded my children from Christmas? James nodded grimly. It is the same thing they have always done, expecting you to take whatever scraps they give while they prioritize your sister. I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists. This was not just about Christmas. This was about a lifetime of being second place. I sat in the quiet of our bedroom that night, staring at old photo albums I had not opened in years. Page after page, I saw the same pattern. My sister at the center of every family event, smiling, surrounded by love and attention. Me, always just slightly to the side, present but never the priority. I remembered birthdays where she got the bigger party, the brand new bike when I got her old one, the way our parents beamed with pride at her piano recital but barely acknowledged when I made the honor roll. And now Christmas was just one more reminder of where I stood. Or rather, where I did not. I shut the album and exhaled shakily. I had spent years making excuses for them, telling myself it was not intentional, that maybe I was imagining it. But I was not imagining it, and I was not going to pretend anymore. The next morning, I sat Emma and Noah down at the kitchen table. Mommy, what is wrong? Noah asked, frowning. I took a deep breath. I just want to talk to you both about something important, about family. Emma's eyes widened. Are we in trouble? I smiled softly. No, sweetheart. But I want to talk about something I learned a little too late in life. They both sat up straighter, listening. Family is not just about who you are related to. It is about the people who show up for you, the people who make you feel loved, not just when it is convenient for them, but always. Noah tilted his head. Like you and Daddy? Exactly, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his little hand. Emma bit her lip. Is this about Grandma and Grandpa? I hesitated, but then nodded. Yes, it is. They exchanged a glance. They were young, but not oblivious. They had noticed things, even if they had not fully understood them. Noah poked at his cereal. They did not come for Christmas. Emma frowned. And they did not get us anything. I swallowed the lump in my throat. They love you, I said carefully, because I would never tell my kids otherwise. But sometimes people do not know how to show love the right way. And when people keep hurting you on purpose, you have to decide if you still want them in your life. Noah frowned. Like when someone is mean at school and does not stop? Yes, I said, my heart aching. Just like that. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, she asked, So are we still seeing them? I looked between my children, feeling the full weight of my decision. No, sweetheart, we are not. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not because she missed them, but because she understood. And then, to my surprise, she nodded. Okay. Noah looked relieved. Can we make pancakes now? I let out a watery laugh. Yes, baby, we can make pancakes. As they scrambled, off their chairs, giggling about toppings, I felt something inside me shift. For the first time in a long time, I was not trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. I was not chasing approval that was never meant for me. I was breaking the cycle. And that was the best Christmas gift I could have ever given my children. It had been 2 weeks since I blocked my parents. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of peace. And then the letters started coming. The first one arrived in an envelope with my mother's handwriting. My stomach twisted the moment I saw it. I should have thrown it away, but curiosity, or maybe old habits, made me open it. Isabella, sweetheart, it began. I stopped there, already feeling the anger rising in my chest. Sweetheart? That is how she started this, after what they had done, after choosing my sister over me, over my kids. I forced myself to keep reading. I do not understand why you are doing this. We are family. Families have disagreements, but they always come back together. We never meant to hurt you. You are overreacting. Overreacting. That word again. I clenched my jaw and kept going. We thought you understood that things have been hard financially. We did not have enough to do a big Christmas for everyone, so we did what we could. Your sister has been struggling too, you know. She needed our help. Why are you punishing us for that? I let out a short laugh. So that was their excuse? That they had to choose because they did not have enough for everyone? They had money for a luxury Christmas for my nieces, but nothing for my kids. I had spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt. Not anymore. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the trash. 3 days later, I got a text. This time, it was from my aunt, my mom's older sister. I hesitated before opening it. Hey, Isabella, I just had a long talk with your mom. She is really upset. She has been crying over this whole thing. She does not understand why you are being so harsh. You know how much she loves you, right? I rolled my eyes. There it was, the classic guilt trip. When they could not bully me into compliance, they tried shaming me into forgiveness. I did not reply right away. Instead, I stared at the message, letting the weight of it sink in. My mom had been crying. Where were those tears when my kids sat by a small tree, unwrapping cheap gifts, believing their grandparents could not afford more? Where was that heartbreak when my sister's kids were showing off their designer sneakers and brand new electronics? Where was her sadness when I found out through a social media post that my own parents had celebrated Christmas without us? They were not crying for me. They were crying because they had lost control of me. Because for the first time in my life, I was refusing to be the daughter who swallowed her feelings just to keep the peace. I took a deep breath and finally typed my response. She is not upset because she hurt me. She is upset because I finally stood up for myself. And if you cannot understand that, then maybe you should stop being her messenger. I hit send. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The final attempt came through an old friend of my mother's, someone I had not spoken to in years. A Facebook message. Isabella, I just wanted to reach out. Your mom is devastated. She does not know how things got so bad between you. She asked me to tell you she loves you. She is heartbroken over what has happened. I know you are upset. But cannot you just talk to her? Life is too short for this kind of grudge. I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. They still did not get it. This was not a grudge. This was a boundary, a decision to stop chasing people who made it clear I was not a priority. And yet, they refused to acknowledge what they had done. There was no apology, no taking responsibility, just more manipulation. This time, I responded with only one sentence. If she is heartbroken, it is only because she finally got treated the way she treated me. That night, James found me sitting on the couch, my phone face down beside me. More messages? He guessed. I nodded. More guilt trips? Yep. He sat down beside me, watching me closely. You okay? I thought about it for a moment, and then, to my surprise, I realized I was. Because for the first time in my life, I was not waiting for my parents to care. I was not desperate for their approval. I was not grasping at the hope that one day they would treat me the way I had always treated them. I was done. And that felt like freedom. James took my hand, giving it a squeeze. Good. And just like that, I knew this was what real love felt like. 2 months passed. 2 months without a word from my parents, my sister, or anyone else carrying their guilt-laden messages. 2 months of peace, of dinners with my husband and kids, of laughter around the table, of weekends spent making memories without the shadow of family obligation hanging over me. At first, it felt strange, like something was missing. But then I realized what I was feeling was not loss. It was relief. But just when I thought I had fully stepped away from the family that had chosen to discard me, something happened that forced me to redefine what family really meant. It was late February when my phone buzzed with a message from my Aunt Sarah, my dad's younger sister. I hesitated before opening it. Sarah had always been different from the rest of the family. She was not part of the drama, not tangled up in my parents' games. She had always been kind, but we had never been close. Her message was simple. Hey, Isabella, I know things have been rough with your parents. I just wanted you to know that I see you. And if you and the kids ever want to come over for dinner, my door is always open. I stared at the screen, my heart tightening. There was no guilt trip, no attempt to manipulate me into going back. Just an offer, an invitation, not an expectation. I thought about it for a long time before replying. That would be really nice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something unexpected. Hope. The following weekend, James and I packed the kids into the car and drove to Sarah's house. It was not a mansion like my parents' home, but it was warm, filled with the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. Sarah greeted us at the door, her face lighting up. You made it. She bent down, smiling at Emma and Noah. You two must be freezing. Come inside. I made hot chocolate. The kids instantly adored her. As they settled in with their drinks, Sarah led me into the kitchen. I know you do not want to talk about it, she said gently, but I just want you to know I do not agree with what they did to you. Tears pricked my eyes. They do not even think they did anything wrong. Sarah sighed. Of course they do not. That is how they are. They expect everyone to cater to them, to forgive them without accountability. I nodded, swallowing hard. They did not just do it to me. They did it to my kids. Her eyes softened. And that is why you are doing the right thing. Protecting your kids from people who only love conditionally. That is the best decision you could ever make. I took a shaky breath. Then why does it still hurt? Because you are a good person, Isabella. And good people always hope for better. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is accept that they will not change and stop waiting for them to. I looked around at her cozy kitchen, at the way she had welcomed my family with open arms, and I realized maybe I had not lost family. Maybe I had just found the ones who actually deserved to be called that. The evening was everything I had once hoped to have with my own parents. Sarah's husband played board games with Emma and Noah, laughing as they made up their own rules. Dinner was filled with conversation that felt easy, not forced. And for the first time in a long time, I did not feel like I had to prove my worth. Sarah did not see me as the backup daughter, the one who had to accept whatever scraps of attention were left over. She saw me as family and treated me like it. As we drove home that night, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my kids, fast asleep in the back seat. James reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? I smiled softly. Yeah, I think I am. Because maybe family was not about blood. Maybe it was about who showed up, who loved you without conditions, who made space for you without making you beg for it. Spring came quickly, washing away the cold remnants of winter. With it came something else. Clarity. I no longer woke up expecting a call from my parents. I no longer hesitated before checking my messages, bracing for another attempt at guilt or manipulation. I no longer cared if they would ever understand why I walked away, because I finally understood it myself. I was not angry anymore. I was not waiting for closure. I had already given it to myself. It had been 4 months since Christmas when my mother finally found a way to contact me again. A letter. Another one. James was the one who picked it up from the mailbox, holding it up between 2 fingers like it might bite. Do you want to read it? I took a deep breath, staring at my mother's handwriting on the envelope. Then, without hesitation, I dropped it in the trash. James raised an eyebrow. That easy? I smiled and meant it. Yeah, it is. For years, I told myself that family was forever, that no matter how many times my parents chose my sister over me, no matter how many times I was treated like an afterthought, I had to hold on because that is just how family is. But I had finally learned the truth. Family is not about DNA. It is about the people who make you feel loved, safe, and seen. And my parents? They had spent a lifetime proving that they were not those people. Easter weekend rolled around, and for the first time, I felt no obligation to reach out to my parents. Instead, we spent the day at Sarah's house. The kids ran around the backyard searching for Easter eggs, while Sarah and I sat on the porch, drinking coffee and watching them play. "This is nice," Sarah said, having family around. I smiled. "Yeah, it is." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "I know it is not the same, Isabella. I know you probably still miss them in some ways." I thought about that. Did I miss them? Or did I miss the idea of them? The parents I had wanted them to be rather than the ones they actually were? I took a deep breath, letting the warm breeze carry away the weight that had once sat so heavy on my chest. "No," I said honestly, "I do not." And for the first time, I knew it was true. That night, I did something I had not done since Christmas. I scrolled through old photos of my parents, my sister, the life I had once tried so hard to hold on to. And then, one by one, I deleted them. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I did not need them anymore. I was done looking back. I was done wondering if I had made the right decision. I was done giving love to people who refused to return it. I put my phone down, exhaled deeply, and closed my eyes. I had let go. The next morning, as I was packing the kids' lunches, Emma suddenly asked, "Mommy, will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again?" I paused, looking down at her little face, so full of innocence, so unaware of the weight behind that question. "I do not know, baby," I said honestly. Noah tilted his head. "Do you miss them?" I thought about that. Did I? "No," I said softly. "I miss what I thought we had, but I love what we have now even more." Emma nodded, as if she understood in the simple, wise way that children often do. And just like that, it was enough. Months turned into a year, and in that time I built something better than the family I had lost. I built a life filled with love, honesty, and respect. I built new traditions with the people who showed up for me. And most importantly, I stopped waiting for love from people who had already shown me they were not willing to give it. Because the best revenge was not anger or bitterness, it was happiness. And I had finally found it. Looking back, I realized the pain of my parents' betrayal taught me a profound lesson. Family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by who shows up with unwavering love and respect. For years, I clung to the hope that my parents would see my worth, excusing their favoritism as unintentional. But their deliberate exclusion at Christmas revealed a truth I could no longer ignore. Love shouldn't be begged for. It should be freely given. By walking away, I wasn't just protecting my children, I was reclaiming my self-worth. I learned that boundaries aren't punishment. They're freedom. They allow you to build a life with people who choose you, like Aunt Sarah, whose open door showed me what true family feels like. Most importantly, I discovered happiness isn't found in chasing approval from those who withhold it, but in creating a life filled with genuine connection. My children deserved a mother who valued herself enough to let go of toxic ties. And in doing so, I gave them, and myself, the gift of a family built on love, not conditions. That was the greatest lesson of all.
The mahogany-lined boardroom gleamed under the late afternoon sun, its tall windows casting slanted beams across the polished table. I sat at the far end, Wren Abbott, 32 and unyielding, my face a careful mask of neutrality. James Carver, 47, strutted before the board like a peacock in a pinstripe suit, his voice dripping with rehearsed venom. The other board members, graying men in their 50s and 60s, watched with smirks tugging at their lips, their eyes glinting with the thrill of a long-awaited kill. "Wren," James paused for effect, straightening his silk tie. "Your performance review has been, frankly, lackluster." He paced, heels clicking on the hardwood. "The board agrees. It's time for a shakeup. No more riding your father's coattails." A ripple of amusement passed through the room, poorly concealed. I glanced at my laptop, pretending to check the time. My finger hovered over the record button, then pressed down. "Let them talk. Every word was gold. 3 months ago, my father, Daniel Abbott, had collapsed at his desk. Heart attack, they said, leaving me with a wound still raw and a company teetering on the edge. James, his protege-turned-predator, had been circling my position since the funeral, convinced I was just a pampered daughter playing at business. I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "My department's numbers speak for themselves," I said, voice cool. 40% efficiency increase this quarter. Highest client retention in 5 years. He smirked wider, a predator baring teeth. "Numbers can be fudged, Ren. We all know how you got this seat." The board exchanged knowing looks, their chuckles a low hum. I let it roll off me, my pulse steady. They saw what they wanted, a privileged girl, daddy's shadow. They had no idea what I'd built in the dark. James leaned forward, palms flat on the table. "It's time for changes. Changes that don't include you." The air thickened, their anticipation palpable. I tilted my head just enough to unsettle him. "Is that the board's official stance?" His eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "Unanimous." I nodded back, slow and deliberate, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at my lips. Let them savor this moment. They'd choke on it soon enough. My father's voice echoed in my mind. "Let them underestimate you, Ren. It's your best advantage." I closed my laptop, the soft click a gunshot in the silence. They'd just fired their own reckoning. James straightened, savoring his victory as he slid a manila folder across the table, its edges crisp against the wood. "We've uncovered some concerning expenses," he said, voice oily with triumph. I didn't touch it. Inside, I knew, were receipts for business dinners at upscale steakhouses, first-class flights to client meetings. All approved, documented, and tied to contracts worth millions. Facts didn't matter here. This was theater, and I was the villain they'd scripted. "With all due respect," I said, my tone even, "those expenses delivered results." The board saw the reports. James laughed, sharp and hollow. "Results? You mean Daddy's name opening doors?" A board member coughed, hiding a grin. "Your father's not here to protect you anymore, Ren." The words landed like a slap, stinging deeper than I'd let them see. 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 days since he'd gone. I pressed my lips together, refusing them the satisfaction of a flinch. "Effective immediately," James continued, relishing each syllable. "You're terminated. Security will escort you out once you've cleared your office." The room erupted in poorly masked chuckles, a chorus of petty triumph. These men had waited years to topple Daniel Abbott's daughter, convinced they were purging a spoiled heiress. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt, my movements deliberate. Their laughter faltered, expecting tears. Maybe a tantrum. "Very well," I said, gathering my laptop. "I accept your decision." James blinked, thrown by my calm. "That's it? No running to Daddy's lawyers?" I smiled faintly, tucking my belongings under my arm. "No need. I'm sure this will sort itself out." His brow furrowed, but he couldn't resist a final jab as I reached the door. "Oh, and Ren, we're voting to sell Elmwood Heights. Too much dead weight." I paused, hand on the knob. Elmwood Heights. Dad's dream of affordable housing, fought for through years of red tape. My grip tightened, but my voice stayed soft. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." He laughed, loud and brash. "What, going to haunt us from the unemployment line?" I stepped into the hall without a reply, their guffaws fading behind me. Let them laugh. They thought they'd won, but they'd just lit the fuse. I walked past curious stares in the lobby, whispers already spreading. Office gossip was wildfire. They didn't know yet, but they'd handed me the match. My office was a tomb of glass and steel, the late evening sun painting it gold. Ellie Harper, 28 and fiercely loyal, looked up from her desk, eyes brimming. Miss Abbott, I heard. I'm so sorry. I smiled, soft but sure. Pack up anything personal, Ellie. But don't worry about a new job just yet. She frowned, confused, but nodded. She'd been Dad's assistant before mine, one of the few who knew the real me. I took nothing but a single photo, Dad and me at my college graduation, both beaming. He'd been proudest when I'd started at the bottom, despite his title. At home, I poured a finger of Dad's favorite whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light. The photo sat on my desk, his grin steadying me. 10 years ago, he'd sat me down after I'd topped my class in business. Learn the company from the ground up, Ren, he'd said, voice gravelly with wisdom. Let them underestimate you. It's your edge. I'd listened. Every bonus, every commission, every penny I'd earned had gone into buying shares. Quietly, through shell companies, a web they'd never untangled. Now, I owned 70%, not inherited. Mine. James and the board saw a privileged daughter, a figurehead to topple. They didn't know I'd built an empire under their noses, card by card, just as Dad taught. My phone buzzed, texts from James's cronies, gloating. Guess Daddy's princess finally got hers. Back to shopping with his credit cards. I screenshot each one, filing them away. Their arrogance was my ammunition. I opened my laptop, dialing Nathan Brooks, 45, my lead counsel, and a shark in a suit. It's time, I said, voice low. Initialize Project Phoenix. He paused, surprised. Already? We figured they'd wait for the quarterly reports. I sipped the whiskey, its burn grounding me. They got cocky. Start with the shares audit. I want everything ready for the shareholders' meeting. He chuckled. On it. I leaned back, the photo catching my eye again. Dad's lessons had been my armor. Patience, strategy, silence. They'd fired me today, thinking it was the end. They had no idea it was my beginning. I raised the glass, a silent toast. You were right, Dad, I whispered. They never saw me coming. The plan was in motion, and I was ready to play my hand. The next morning, my home office buzzed with quiet purpose, the city skyline a gray blur beyond the window. I sat at my desk, laptop open, the whiskey glass from last night still resting beside Dad's photo. His words lingered. Keep your cards close, Ren, as I dialed Laura Pierce, 50, a tech CEO who'd clawed her way up through the same glass ceilings I'd shattered. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp. Ren, I heard. Moving forward as planned? I nodded, though she couldn't see it. How soon can you transition your contracts? A pause, then a smile in her tone. Give me the word, and we start tomorrow. My board's already greenlit the contingency. I hung up, my fingers dancing across the keyboard, pulling up reports James couldn't bury fast enough. He'd begun his reign with reckless slashes, laying off seasoned staff, cutting corners on quality control, prepping to gut Elmwood Heights. I documented every violation, every email, every memo that crossed ethical lines. My phone buzzed again, more texts from his inner circle, their venom unchecked. Should have stuck to charity galas, princess. I screenshot them, adding to my arsenal. Their overconfidence was a gift, each message a nail in their coffin. Next, I called Nathan Brooks, his voice steady as ever. Shares audits underway, he confirmed. They're oblivious. Stock transactions are still routing through the usual channels. I leaned back, the chair creaking softly. Good. They got cocky, Nathan. Let's use it. He chuckled, a rare sound. Already digging into their personal accounts, too. You'll have everything by the meeting. I thanked him, my gaze drifting to the photo. Dad had taught me this game. Watch, wait, strike when they're blind. Over the next few weeks, I worked from the shadows, a ghost in their machine. Laura's team quietly shifted contracts, major clients peeling away from James's grasp. He didn't notice, too busy parading his victory, his arrogance making him sloppy. I tracked it all, every layoff that tanked morale, every shortcut that risked safety. The Elmwood Heights sale loomed closer, his signature on every dotted line. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste sharpening my focus. They thought I was gone, licking wounds. Instead, I was building a guillotine, blade gleaming, ready to drop. A month later, I walked into the company headquarters, the lobby falling silent as I crossed the marble floor. My black dress hugged me like armor, sharp and unrelenting, Dad's vintage watch ticking against my wrist. The emergency shareholders meeting had hit their inboxes that morning, a thunderclap they couldn't ignore. Nathan's audit had uncovered my web of ownership, 70% traced back to me through a maze of shell companies. James hadn't authorized this. He couldn't. I stepped into the elevator, catching his ashen face by the doors. "Ren, we need to talk," he stammered. "This audit, there's a mistake." I brushed past him, voice low. "No mistake, James. Surprised it took you this long. Dad always said you were slow with numbers." The boardroom was a pressure cooker, every seat filled. Board members, shareholders, executives, their faces a gallery of panic. I took Dad's old chair at the head, no one daring to protest, and opened my laptop. The screen flared to life, projecting a spreadsheet of my acquisitions, a decade of silent conquest. "Let me make this simple," I began, my voice cutting through the hush. "I own 70% of this company, not through inheritance, not through Daddy's gifts, but my own moves over the past 10 years. James stood, mouth working soundlessly, then sank back as I clicked to the next slide. Emails, financial records, proof of their rot. "The board's recent actions," I continued, "violate company policy and ethical guidelines. Discriminatory firing, client contract breaches, quality control cuts, the attempt to sabotage Elmwood Heights. I have it all." The room erupted, protests overlapping, but I held up a hand, silencing them. "Effective immediately. The entire board is suspended, pending investigation. Securities escorting your replacements in now. Executives chosen for integrity, not politics." Footsteps echoed outside right on cue. James lunged forward, face purple. "You can't do this! You're just what, James?" I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "The CEO's daughter? You're right. He taught me everything, especially how to let enemies underestimate you." The board raged, chairs scraping, voices rising, but I let it wash over me. Nathan and his team swept in, thick folders in hand, legal documents, my real muscle. "You have two choices," I said, voice steady. "Resign quietly with basic severance or face legal action for your violations. Pick fast." One by one, they slunk out, dreams of takeover crumbling. James lingered, his earlier swagger a memory, shock etching lines into his face. I closed my laptop, the click final. They'd thought me a pawn, a relic of Dad's reign. Now they saw the queen, checkmate delivered. I stood, smoothing my dress, the watch's tick a heartbeat. This wasn't just revenge, it was reclamation. Dad's legacy, mine to wield. Evening settled over my office, Dad's office, now mine, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. I sat at his desk, the new board gathered around, faces fresh and eager. We'd spent hours outlining the future. Elmwood Heights not just saved, but expanded. A beacon of affordable housing and community care. "The staff James fired," I said, tapping a list. "Rehire them with back pay. They're the backbone here." Nods circled the table, no smirks, no games. These were people I'd chosen, not inherited. The meeting ended, chairs pushed back, voices fading as they left. I stayed, alone with the hum of the building, my fingers tracing the desk's edge. Dad had carved his initials here once, a quiet claim. I opened a drawer, pulling out his plans for Elmwood Heights, blueprints, notes in his jagged scrawl. He'd fought for this, believing business should lift people, not just profits. James had nearly torched it, not anymore. I stood, slipping the plans into my bag, and drove to the cemetery, the night air cool against my skin. Dad's grave stood under an oak, fresh flowers from last week still bright. I knelt, placing a new bouquet beside his headstone, the stone cold under my touch. "We did it, Dad," I whispered, voice catching. "They never saw me coming, just like you said." The wind rustled the leaves, a soft reply. I'd turned their ambush into my ascent, their laughter into silence. Elmwood Heights would rise, bigger than he'd dreamed, because I'd learned his lessons well. Patience, vision, the power of being unseen. Back home, I poured another whiskey, the photo on my desk glowing under the lamp. His grin steadied me, a promise kept. My phone buzzed. Ellie, texting updates, new board settling in, clients are thrilled. I smiled, sipping the drink, its warmth spreading. The fight wasn't over, James wouldn't fade quietly, but I was ready. This was my company now, forged in my hands, not just his. I raised the glass, a silent vow. The next move was mine, and I'd play it my way. 6 months later, I met Diane Carver at a quiet coffee shop, the hum of espresso machines filling the air. She sat across from me, 45, her once polished society wife veneer replaced by a raw, determined edge. Divorce had stripped her bare, and she liked it that way. "Thank you for coming," she said, hands tight around her cup. "There's something you need to know." I leaned in, the steam curling between us. "James?" She nodded, eyes hard. "He's planning something. He and the old board. They've been meeting secretly." I'd known about the meetings. My security team had tracked every move. But her next words froze me. "They're going after Elmwood Heights," she said. "Richard found contamination reports from the 70s. Industrial waste. He's doctoring them to leak to the media, make it look like your father knew, covered it up, and you're doing the same." My blood ran cold. Dad had flagged those traces years ago, ensured proper remediation. In the wrong hands, though, it was dynamite. "Why tell me?" I asked. She smiled, bitter. 23 years, and he never saw me as more than a trophy. Sound familiar? I texted Nathan mid-sip. "Initiate Protocol Delta. Our contingency for this exact play." James's timing was clever. The project's first phase nearly done. Families picked for the units. The next morning, his move hit. Every news outlet got an anonymous tip. Social media erupting with accusations. I called a press conference at the Elmwood Heights site, the half-built community center stark against the sky. Reporters swarmed, James lurking at the edge, his smirk barely hidden. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, voice steady. "Yesterday, some tried to derail this project with lies. Today, I'll show you the truth." Engineers stepped forward, real data in hand. Tests, remediation logs, safety protocols. Families spoke next, their hope drowning out the noise. Then, I landed the blow. And now, thanks to Diane Carver's generous donation, we're expanding, adding a community center with free childcare and job training. James's smirk vanished, cameras catching his shock. The story flipped overnight, from scandal to redemption. Diane had handed me the win, and I'd turned his dagger into dust. A week later, Ellie burst into my office, face pale, her usual calm shattered. "Turn on the news," she said, breathless. I flicked on the screen, and there was James, standing outside headquarters in a rumpled suit, flanked by former board members. His practiced smile had a desperate edge, weight loss to sleepless nights. "We're filing a class action lawsuit," he declared, voice thin. "Ren Abbott manipulated share prices, coerced us into selling." I watched, coffee in hand, unfazed. He thought he had one last card. He didn't know I'd already trumped it. I dialed Laura Pierce, her voice sharp on the first ring. "Saw the news," she said. "What do you need?" I smiled, leaning back. "Those offshore accounts James ran his side deals through. Time to bring them to light." She laughed, low and fierce. "Give me an hour." By noon, financial reporters broke a different story. James and his cronies caught in a web of kickbacks and insider trading. Evidence overwhelming. Anonymously sourced. I'd known about those accounts for months, waiting for the right moment. This was it. From my office window, I watched FBI agents swarm the street below, sunlight glinting off their badges. James stumbled out, hands cuffed, his suit a wrinkled shell. He looked up, eyes meeting mine through the glass. I raised my coffee cup, a mock toast, the corner of my mouth lifting. His glare faltered, then fell. The man who'd laughed me out of the boardroom was gone, his empire of arrogance in ruins. The news cycle spun, his arrest dominating headlines, Elmwood Heights glowing in the aftermath. Ellie peeked in, a grin breaking through. "Stocks up 5 points already." I nodded, setting the cup down. "Good. Tell Laura thanks." James had aimed for my throat and hit his own instead. I turned back to the window, the city sprawling below. Dad's lessons had carried me here. Strike when they're weakest, let their hubris pave the way. This wasn't just victory, it was justice, clean and final. 1 year after my firing, I stood on a podium at Elmwood Heights, the sun warm on my shoulders, hundreds gathered below. The first families clutched keys, their smiles bright against the new brick buildings. The Daniel Abbott Community Center hummed behind me, already alive with classes. Diane, running programs, her calling found. I cut the ribbon, red silk parting under the scissors, applause rolling through the crowd. James's revenge had backfired. His scandal had tripled housing applications. Other firms, now, begging our guidance. Catherine sat front row, beaming, her donation a cornerstone of this day. Next to her, Ellie, now chief of staff, scribbled notes, her promotion earned. I stepped off the podium, shaking hands when a young woman approached, nervous but determined. "Miss Abbott," she said, "I'm Maya Carver, James's daughter. I know this is awkward, but I've followed what you've done here. Any entry-level openings?" She was 22, fresh from business school, her eyes echoing my own hunger years ago. "Your father hasn't spoken to me since I testified at his trial," she added, chin up. "He never thought I had a head for business either." I studied her, seeing the spark he'd missed. "When can you start?" I asked. Her face lit up, a mirror to my own beginnings. "Monday," she said, firm. I nodded, turning back to the crowd, their chatter a living pulse. This was Dad's dream. Success that lifted others, not just balance sheets. Later, I visited his grave, the headstone freshly engraved. Beloved father and mentor, his legacy lives on. I set down flowers, their scent mingling with the earth. "You should see it now, Dad," I said softly. "Elmwood Heights is just the start, 3 more neighborhoods next." My phone buzzed. Ellie with stock highs, Laura doubling contracts. I touched the stone, a final goodbye, then walked away, ready for tomorrow. James had thought he'd ended me. Instead, he'd launched me, and I'd built something bigger than he'd ever dreamed. 2 years after that boardroom ambush, I sat in my office, Dad's office, night cloaking the city beyond the glass. Reports glowed on my laptop, profits up, employee turnover at record lows, Elmwood Heights a model replicated globally. Photos lined my desk, one of Dad and me at graduation, another with the first Elmwood residents, all grinning. My phone buzzed, Laura, ready for an international expansion talk. I smiled, the lessons clear, battles fought, victories won, enemies' arrogance my ladder. Ellie appeared in the doorway, sharp in her chief of staff role. "Miss Abbott, the new board's waiting, strategy meeting." I glanced at Dad's photo, his grin steady as ever. "Coming, Ellie," I said, standing. "We've got work to do." I smoothed my jacket, Dad's watch ticking against my wrist. They'd called me the CEO's daughter, a title meant to diminish. They never understood it meant learning from the best, business, integrity, turning underestimation into power. James's laughter was a distant echo, his ending my beginning. I strode out, the company's transformation unfinished, new challenges ahead. I was ready, not just his daughter anymore, but the CEO who'd made success a rising tide for all.